Hello, we're back for another episode talking some Gators football. Didn't know how many more of these we would do. But then DJ Lagway got his first career start, first true freshman to start for Florida since 2014. So we're back to react to his performance and just a little bit update on how Gators football is going. So Topher, the floor is yours. Thoughts on DJ Lagway and his first start for the Gators?
Yeah, so there's this funny thing um in college football with talented five-star freshman quarterbacks. Um so everybody wants them to play right away because they assume five-star freshman quarterback means he's the savior of your program, right? Um and there's two ways this goes. There's the 90% of the time he's a freshman. So he 100% should not play, and if he does, it's probably going to go poorly, right? Even the best true freshman quarterbacks, like the most talented recruits in the country, that's what it looks like more often than not.
I mean, I
Uh,
feel like that's what we're seeing now with Nico. He didn't play at all his last season. People
no,
were like, he's probably better than Joe Milton, and I mean, he's playing better than Joe Milton as of right now. But he wasn't ready. They sat him, and now he looks, really good through these first two games at Tennessee. Just
exactly. And that's kind of what it is with freshman quarterbacks. And you don't want to get lost too early and kind of throw them to the wolves. Um, so that's 90%. DJ Lagway is firmly in the 10% of where they're just the freaking amazing off rip. This is not supposed to happen. Not against Samford or anybody. I don't care if they're a bad Southland team or whatever league they're in. It doesn't matter. That'd be impressive against air. It'd be impressive in a t-shirt and shorts. I mean, dude, 456 yards on 18 completions.
yeah, it was
Like,
ridiculous. And again, just real quick to read off his official stat line: 18 to 25, 456 yards, three touchdowns, no interceptions in his first career start. But yeah, Topher saying it's one of those things where even if it's Sanford, again, like we understand they're playing an FCS school. As I was talking with Topher before this, they lost to West Georgia last week. We're not going to act like they're some FCS powerhouse or maybe even above average FCS school. But the point is still he's a freshman. He's I think still 18 years old, and to play that good is something that is just so rare. Doesn't matter who you're playing against at the collegiate
and
level.
I tweeted this, and it's in reference to kind of the quarterback conversation, which I'm sure we can have a chat about. But I mean, like, use your eyes. I don't know what to tell you. Like think even a little bit. Like, it doesn't take much to be convinced. Like, there's no smoke and mirrors here. Like, he's doing the thing. And it's it'd be one thing if he had these numbers and it was just screens and quick slants and his receivers just took over. And like there's a tiny bit of that. It's because there's a big Trey Wilson jet sweep that went like 75 yards or something. So there's a little bit of that inflation because he got the ball to his playmakers. But well, one, I actually think a lot of that is because of DJ and how he affects defenses. But two, like, look at these passes, man.
They're
Look at the
they're
air yard.
nuts.
Like he's doing the thing.
I mean, and we'll get into the quarterback conversation in a little bit. That's obviously something that has now become a major point of discussion before DJ even stepped on the field, but now even more that we've seen what he can do at the collegiate level. But to your point, we both went back and watched this game. Grant or DJ Lagway had 8 passes of 10 plus more yards, and that's not like you said the jet sweep to Trey that went for what 75, 80 yards. These are purely he threw the ball for 10 or more air yards, and he had 8 passes of those. 8 of his 18 completions went for 10 or more yards solely through the air. He had four screens and jet sweeps. Those passes where it kind of feels typical in the Billy Napier offense, and where even if the receiver goes off for 20, 30 yards, that's not necessarily DJ. That's more he just threw it to him behind the line of scrimmage and the receiver made a play. And then he had 6 short passes just around, short of 10 yards, which again, really solid for a freshman quarterback. And, as you say, we could go ahead and just start talking about some of those throws. I mean, those are throws that not just for a freshman, but most college quarterbacks just simply aren't making. I mean, we watched college football pretty much all day yesterday. I mean, not to rub salt in the wounds, but we saw Riley Leonard at Notre
Oh,
Dame.
dude.
We saw Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. We saw guys who, we're not just saying like, oh, well, Joe Schmo at Georgia Southern, no, stray taken to Georgia Southern. This is the first school that came to my mind. Like, we're not saying just the typical quarterback. We're saying guys who we're seen as maybe top college quarterbacks who, like a guy for Leonard, for example, is getting a lot of draft buzz. And DJ Lagway is making these throws that simply, at least yesterday, they weren't making. Um, and one of the passes I really want to highlight was the eighth drive of the game. It was they had the ball at the Sanford 41-yard line. DJ Lagway drops back to about the 45, a little further back, and he steps up in the pocket, evades pressure. He he's about to get hit as he just lets this ball go on his back foot, and he finds Aiden Mizell in the end zone, and that was just ridiculous. So, if you want to talk about that pass a little bit more,
I I mean, that's the one. Like, I think all the deep balls were just splendid, and there's some other passes too, kind of the middle of the field throws that are also they just kind of make your ears prick up. But like that one is the okay, all right. This like that was the difference between like he's very good to like this is not normal. That's the difference. Like um kind of a counterpoint, like thinking about Florida history, like Will Greer, right, in 2015 or 14, whichever year that was, I don't remember. Um,
it was
like
2015.
he could throw the ball, right? He could sling it a little bit. And it was like, whoa. And he ended up being a very good college quarterback at West Virginia. He was like a third round draft pick, very good player. Um, but that third, that Mizell touchdown is like he not only could he be nice, he could be like one of one, build him a statue next to Spurrier, Tebow, and Danny Werfel territory. Like, and
Because I
obviously
mean,
that's a long ways down the road, but like
yeah,
that's the kind of talent that like no one does that. That's not like these are special tools. And like just in terms of skill set and what he's physically capable of, um, like the only comps in Florida history, and honestly, maybe the only comps in general is like Cam and Anthony Richardson.
yeah. I mean, to that throw, like you mentioned, there were just so many throws. Just that whole game was just kind of breathtaking to watch. But really pinpointing on that one pass, there's so many layers to it. He feels pressure. He's able to step up in the pocket. He gets under pressure. There's a dude about to sack him, and he just gets the ball off, launches it like 45, 50 yards. And Mizell was open, but it's not like he had the earlier touchdown where he just lofted it up to Tank Hawkins, and that was an incredible pass. But Tank Hawkins had so much separation, like he was wide open, so much so where I think it was a very good pass. And this is not me knocking DJ. I think it was just a smidge underthrown. Like you see Tank Hawkins have to slow down just a little bit and get back and catch the ball, but he's so open that it doesn't even matter. But this pass, you know, Mizell's not completely open. There's a dude on him. Like it has to be, over his shoulder, perfect placement if this is going to be a touchdown. That's like NFL type open. Like that's the kind of this guy's wide open NFL style. And Lagway just right on the money, right in his hands. Mizell brings it down. Great play from Mizell as well. Just want to give him a quick shout out. And it's a touchdown. And just plays like that the whole game where I was really impressed with DJ. I mean, he just looked so polished for a freshman quarterback. And again, I know it's Sanford, but like guys do not usually look that polished no matter who it is in their first career start. Um, and even when he's doing the bubble screens or a jet sweep, kind of as you mentioned, what he brings to Florida as his quarterback and his playing style affects the defense to have more success to those plays. And Topher, do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that makes DJ kind of a game breaker for right now, not even his potential and his skill set, is it forces the defense to defend the entire field. Because he does two things that Graham Mertz, I like the guy, I've turned around him a lot, but he does two things that Graham Mertz just cannot do, just is physically incapable of doing, and that's running the football and pushing the ball vertically down the field. Graham Mertz just can't do those things. we've seen enough of him. He has played so many college football games between Wisconsin and Florida, and he just can't do those. That's just not what he is capable of doing. So I think play action, for example, and I think a really great example of this is the first bomb to Badger on I think the second drive of the game for Florida. That situation can't happen with Graham Mertz because so it's a little naked rollout to DJ going to his right, stops, plants his feet, and then he finds Badger on an out and up going down the field, right? This play is not in the playbook for Graham Mertz because he can't throw the ball that far. He can't push the ball down the field that way. And the other point to it is that when Graham Mertz is on a bootleg, you can kind of just sit in the middle of the field. You can kind of just sit between the line of scrimmage and the 10-yard line because you know the ball is going to come to like Hayden Hansen or Arlis Boardingham on a sneak flat or Trey Wilson or whomever kind of coming across over the top and kind of like a short crossover type situation. But the ball's not going to go any further than that, and he's not going to run the ball. So you can kind of key in on them if you're the backside edge, and then you can just take away the short stuff. You can't do that with DJ. If DJ's on a naked, he can take it himself because he's not the fastest guy in the world. I think sometimes his speed's a little overrated. He's not that fast. He's not like Jalen Milrow or someone like, or even Anthony Richardson, who just can absolutely fly. But he's very mobile and he's built like a truck.
Yeah,
So he can get downhill. So you have to take away that. You have to be cautious or take into account the running threat. And then he didn't take the top off. So then if you're Billy Napier and the play offensive play callers, you can get creative with deep shots from these different sets. Because usually that boot play is just going to be flat, over, come back to the far right. But instead they're able to do the flat and the over, and then Badger's on an out and up, and he's 60 yards down the field, and DJ's like, yeah, I got that, no worries. And he puts an absolute dime piece just right in the bucket.
exactly. And I mean, to your point, I think one of the biggest sort of plays that sort of highlighted this contrast is there was a play in the Sanford game where this isn't even a play where DJ like kept it and ran for like 10 yards or something crazy. He is in the pocket, it's collapsing, and there's about two or three Sanford defenders. And if that's Graham Mertz, that's a sack. They were closing in quick. He had to make a move in the pocket, and DJ, he evades a defender, he gets out, and he's able to find space. And I think he's either tackled for it's either no gain or 1 yard. So like in the grand scheme of things, like big picture wise, not significant at all. Like 1 yard gain, no gain is not going to change that drive too much. But it's more so damage control because if that's Graham Mertz and he's athletic, like if there's just nobody there and there's not really pressure, he can run for 10 yards. Like he was a 4-star athlete, like he's an athletic guy, but he doesn't have the sort of athletic ability of a guy like DJ or some of these other dual threat guys where, if that same play's happening, he's probably taking a sack there. And so the difference between either no gain or 1 yard is miles ahead of, okay, now you're dealing with 2nd and 15. Now you're dealing with 2nd and 18. And then your play calling gets much more stagnant in what you can call, especially with what quarterback you have back there. And B, they were in Sanford territory on that play. That kills you because if you take a long sack, maybe you're out of field goal range, and maybe in a situation where it's not Sanford, you need a touchdown. That makes scoring a touchdown so much harder. And again, to one of your earlier points, so one of my favorite throws from DJ, obviously I love the deep bombs; those were just incredible to see. Was actually the play right before the touchdown to uh Aiden Mizell. He had a play where I don't remember which receiver it was, but he's streaking across to the right sideline. DJ rolls out on a play action, and kind of similar to Mizell, where this guy's not like he's not college open, he's NFL open. Like you have to hit it, you have to thread the needle. And if you don't get it like right over his shoulder into his hands, that's not a completion. And he just rolls out and as he's moving, just fires it, and it's just perfect placement. And it's a 17-yard gain, first down. And those are the kind of plays where just so promising to see from your freshman and just so satisfying, refreshing to see as a Florida fan. Just wanting good quarterback play.
I just like I don't know how to the best summarize this, but he's the quarterback that the system needs. And this is kind of the crazy thing, like to Billy Napier eyes this conversation. Like why on earth was Graham Mertz the quarterback for this offense? Like it kind of blows my mind because between the best of the Anthony Richardson year, the kind of highlights of that year, like the Tennessee game, Texas A&M, like some of those moments in that year one, and then this game with DJ, like when you have a guy who can one push the ball down the field vertically and two run a little bit, like this offense works correctly.
It looks
Um,
good. It makes Billy Napier look smart as a play caller.
like, and because here's the thing about like, that baffles me about Billy Napier is that he's not an idiot in terms of offensive football. I have so much to criticize him for, and I actually hope to get to some of it here. Um, but like his actual scheme is fine. A lot of it I really like, and for a guy like DJ, I think it might be the perfect offense for his skill set. Like it looks more correct for him than if he was in the Tennessee veer and shoot, or if he was in Lane Kiffin's kind of up-tempo veer-ish stuff, you know? Like this is probably the most correct offense for a guy built like DJ. And it's just crazy to me that Billy Napier wasted a year and a game on a guy like Graham Mertz, who like is fine, but he doesn't do what the offense needs him to do, and he doesn't make anybody better. So it's very strange to me. Yeah, I love DJ Lagway, man.
I do too. And this will kind of segue into the next part I want to talk about, which is obviously the quarterback conversation. Graham Mertz is going to be back from concussion protocol, I believe. Billy Napier said that DJ's too good to just sit on the bench, but from all indications, it feels like Graham Mertz will go back into the starting role for Texas A&M. So just kind of what I want to talk about right here, and this will segue us into that quarterback conversation, is just I went back, I watched that Florida McNeese game last year, and I know we had a whole sample size of Graham Mertz as Florida's quarterback. So why look at this game? And I think it's just such a good indicator because it's like when you're playing the FCS school, when you're playing the game that you should win, like that's kind of just check it off. W. We'll send the check to your campus Sunday, and you'll lose to us by 50 on Saturday. Is kind of when you get to open up the playbook and test some stuff out because it's like, hey, last week against Miami, for example, you know, you got to do what's work. You got to use what works. Like playing an in-state rival in a huge home match is not the time to like let's experiment everything. And but when you play a team like Samford, you play a team like McNeese, it's like okay, if things are going awry, we can go back to our bread and butter. But like maybe we can try this player, maybe we could try this sequence on this drive and see how it goes. Watching back that McNeese game, first of all, it was so much just running the ball, and that worked. Like don't get me wrong, they ran the ball down McNeese's throats, and that was to incredible success. But frankly, they don't have the offensive line to do that against the SEC. Like they're gonna have good run plays in spurts because I think Montrell Johnson is one of the better backs in the country. Like he's definitely not Ashton Jeanty or Jaden Ott, but like he's still a really good running back. And I think you look at that game where Graham Mertz does throw the ball. I think I charted it. He had compared to like I said 8 passes of 10 or more yards from DJ Lagway. Graham Mertz had 4 against McNeese. He had 2 incompletions. And so much of his throws were just checkdowns, short passes. And I think it goes to show that Billy Napier knows that he can open up the playbook more with DJ. And so again, it's just puzzling why he wouldn't just go to his guy. I mean, I get that they're humans. They're not just like football players with no emotions. And that's like a veteran guy and he's been with Napier. So there's more than that, but just in terms of wins and losses, which Billy needs to win right now, um, you always need to win, but like Billy really needs to win right now. You got to just go with the guy who gives you the best chance to win, and that's DJ.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is that all we're talking about with DJ and his mobility and his vertical passing ability, like the crazy thing too is there's nothing Graham Mertz does better. Like the intermediate stuff, the decision making, I'm not really convinced any of that's better from Graham Mertz. I don't think he makes terrible decisions. I don't think he's horribly inaccurate, but he's not great. Like even in the intermediate stuff, the outbreaking stuff, the checkdowns, like his accuracy can be kind of little sketchy. He doesn't always put the ball where it needs to be to create run after catch opportunities. His decision making, like he doesn't usually put the ball in harm's way, but I don't know, man. I watched that Miami game.
It was
Um,
rough.
it's tough scenes, and like it's going to be different when DJ eventually plays like SEC level defenses and SEC level athletes and how he adjusts to those circumstances. But man, I don't know. He's such a natural thrower of the ball. The ball just comes out of his hands so good and so smoothly and so on time. Like I find it hard to believe that he's worse at anything than Graham Mertz, other than maybe just the moment and being able to meet the moment. And kind of the expectations of being a starting quarterback at a program like Florida. He's what, like 18, 19 years old? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot to it. And, he talked about being really nervous for this game and all that, but whatever mental edge Graham Mertz has cannot be significant. Because to be honest, in terms of their football playing ability, it's night and day. I think DJ is as good at Mertz as everything Mertz does well, with also like a bunch of other stuff, and he's a freshman who can only get better.
Yeah, and the thing that's like I found so curious again, contrasting that McNeese and Sanford game is like of those two games, 20 last year Florida had the best receiver, Ricky Pearsall. Like you can say maybe all around this receiving core might be better, but as of right now, Ricky Pearsall of this year's team and last year's team is the best receiver. I mean, he was a first round draft pick for a reason. He should have had 1,000 yards last year, if not for a Max Brown started FSU game. He's incredible. And you see Graham Mertz, and something I find so interesting is like maybe I need to rewatch the Sanford game a third time, but it didn't necessarily look like DJ Lagway was like, okay, first read, second read, third read, let me hit my third, or like it didn't look like every single play like he was reading the pocket. And this is not a dig at DJ. This is like he saw his first read was open and he's able to hit his first read because he's a good quarterback. Whereas Graham Mertz is like, okay, he is, you can tell, like he's first read's not there, second read's not there, check down. And that's fine. But when your whole drive is just check down, check down, check down, it doesn't matter if you're good at reading the defense. If you can't hit the throws that are there, because you're like, oh, it's super tight. Like, let me just check down. Let me just play it safe. Sometimes you do have to take that risk to win at this level of football. You can't just dink and dunk against every single team you play against because some of these teams you play against are national championship level, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at any data, any analysis of how to win in football, and especially in college football, like you have to be explosive. You have to be explosive offensively and create chunk plays because you can't nickel and dime your way to every score. It's not possible. You will not win football games if you have to nickel and dime your way down the field every possession. Um, and the Graham Mertz offense had next to no big playability unless someone popped wide open, or like a screen breaks loose, or they get the right leverage on a wide zone, and Montreal can get a big gain, like the 60-yarder against Miami, right? Like you can't manufacture explosives in the Graham Mertz offense. They just kind of you just kind of have to hope for a mistake, really. Um, but with DJ, his ability, like you're saying, to not settle for checkdowns and have the actual arm talent to expand the definition of open, um, and take advantage of the receiving core, especially this year's receiving core. I think to your point, I think it's a better room, and I also think it's very explosive. This is a very fast group of receivers, um, especially like sucks to see Khalil Jackson get hurt. But what it does in a football sense, is it opens the room for fast players to get on the field. And another thing of like, I'm not really sure what Billy's doing is that like he keeps playing the wrong receivers and getting the wrong receivers the ball because he has all these big bodied, slow receivers, but that doesn't work. And he has all these fast young guys like Hawkins and Mizell and Trey Wilson. It's like, and Badger now the transfer, who's not a young guy, but he's fast, and even DK's pretty fast. It's like use your speed. You have it.
Yeah, it's
Utilize
it's
it.
it's so interesting because like Napier's dubbed this guy who's like he was gonna come in and he was gonna be a really good recruiter. And you look at around the room, like just looking at like the skill position guys, He actually has done like obviously I think he's definitely underselled or underperformed in this area of like he has to recruit. Just like at the offensive line is full of 3-star guys. But like his wide receiver room is like kind of nasty in terms of the guys he's brought in. Like he
And
brought
he
in a
brought in
bunch
Ricky
of
too, so he
yeah.
knows how to bring in these guys.
I mean, he was what? He was a wide receivers coach at Bama, correct? So like
Mhm.
he knows that position well. And so I don't understand why how he can see that kind of play from these guys and the guys he brought in as like part of his regime and they're not seeing the field. It like they need to be seeing the I mean, you look at I just pulled this up from Matt Baker. Like through Napier's first 26 games, the Gators completed 15 passes of 40 plus yards. And then through 22 minutes, Lagway had 3. And then I think he ended it with what, five or six because of those later plays. And that's because of guys like Badger, guys like Trey Wilson, guys like Hawkins, guys like Mizell. Because, I feel like every year with Napier, I'll see a stat where like one of the assistant coaches will talk about how there's just like a quarter of the team, a fifth of the team is just like they run like what? I don't know this. I'm not gonna make up a number off the top of my head, but it's like ridiculously like fast for a human. Like humans should not run this fast. And it's like, okay, obviously football, like when they're actually playing, it's different. But like I would like to see the speed in an actual game, please. Like this isn't track. Like this isn't like they're not just having a sprinting contest. Like where's the speed in the football field? And I think most of it is just the fact that Graham Mertz, the receivers that they are getting the most playing time are not those guys who are that fast. And B, I don't think Graham Mertz has the ability to air it out to allow those guys to show off that speed. But we saw that with DJ.
Yeah, I mean, like these guys are good. I don't know why so much time is being wasted on guys who aren't as good. It blows my mind, and we can always say, oh, the coaches are there every day, they see every practice, but like this regime sucks. They're not winning football games, and every time we do see the guys that the fans clamor for, they're really good. So I don't know what the disconnect is. I think there's something in their evaluation or their process is just like incorrect, and they're unwilling to trust the talent. Um, and especially if you're projecting forward, like what's the risk? Like you're already kind of cooked. And we know these guys, the experienced, like slow veteran guys, like they're not going to do it for you. So, trust your guys that your staff recruited and just go make something happen.
I mean, and that's the thing. And I full-heartedly think that DJ Lagway should be the guy. Like I think he just has to play. But if there was any argument for Graham Mertz being the guy, then I think it's like where you're not in this situation. You have a really good defense and your skill position and maybe your offense isn't like killer, but it's still pretty good. And you want a veteran guy who's like not gonna make mistakes and you know that you can win like 8, 9 games because of how good your team is overall. And so you just don't want the guy making mistakes and you're gonna sit your freshman. The issue is that's not the case. Florida looked miserable in week 1. The defense looked good against week 2. And I don't mean to, go both or move the goalpost where I'm like, I'm really impressed by DJ, but I don't care that the defense did against FCS. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, the defense gave up 7 to McNeese last year and forced his safety. We saw how that team was. We saw how their defense was last week. Maybe they'll be good against Texas A&M because Connor Wegman so far has not looked like a very good quarterback. But I need to see a little bit more from this defense. And maybe DJ gets out there and he gets into SEC play and he throws 3 picks against Texas A&M. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, you have to win now. Your back's against the wall. I mean, we're coming to you live from basements in Florida, talking about how bad the situation has gotten. I'm sorry, Billy. I know you apologize for that statement, but I had to bring it up. Um, and so, I mean, the it's just not good. And so you have to cling to whatever optimism you have and future you have. And the thing is like, what else do you have to lose? And I think the most frustrating part about this is the fact that we like with a game like Sanford, we get this bite-sized view of what this team could be. They have explosive receivers. They have what looks like a generational quarterback. They could have pieces on defense that if they had a guy to develop them properly, could be a pretty good defense but we only get this bite-sized view. They probably won't play as much as the season goes on. They get into SEC play. And once, I don't say, if Napier gets canned because he's on the hot seat, then a lot of those guys are probably just going to leave. And so they're probably going to do exactly what they're saying they're going to do at Texas and Alabama and FSU and Miami. And we're just going to be sitting here being like, wow, I wish we could have seen these guys play more this season. And I think that's just the most frustrating part.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I hope Billy, now that, back's against the wall, he's got to make it or break it here. I hope he is able to evaluate and be honest with himself and kind of just ride with what clearly works instead of trying to force something to happen. Um, I think I know we pre-fired Billy Napier last week, and I still kind of stand by that. But we also said we're willing to be proven wrong. This is an example of being proven wrong, and you combine these correct decisions to embrace the youth, embrace the talent on the roster with some improved play. Maybe you get some results because DJ's so good. Who knows? Maybe there is actual hope for a Napier regime, and it kind of turns in. It's not the Willie Taggart, and it actually is more of a Mike Norvell situation. We'll see. Although maybe that Mike Norvell situation is a little overblown.
Yeah, it's interesting what's going on in Tallahassee right now. Yeah, but I mean, I mean, we covered this team last year. And something we heard so often, especially during that losing streak, was this team is so young. We're playing so many freshmen and sophomores, the most in the country. And, there is some credit to him given for that kind of thing where it's like, okay, you're willing to embrace the youth. But now we're in a situation where you have a fifth year over a freshman quarterback who clearly looks better than him. That offensive line is full of 3 stars. And he hasn't recruited a lot, but he's recruited some 4 stars. And I know offensive line is a position that's like harder to be a freshman and immediately start, unless you're just like top of the top dude. But now some of these 4 stars are in their second year. And I mean, unless they just look really bad in practice, which we don't see that, why don't they get a shot? Because that offensive line, I mean, man.
Yeah.
And the wide receivers, again, it's tough because I do like Badger and I do like DK. And I think they are good additions. But it's tough that they have so much explosiveness and so much depth in terms of guys like they have, Trey Wilson is obviously their number one, but then they have Aiden Mizell. I don't know what happened to Andy G, and I think he's hurt. Um, they have Tank Hawkins. And so they have guys there who it's like, okay, you have really explosive young guys. Can we get them on the field more? But they're playing behind fourth year seniors. And kind of similar with the defense where it's just like if you this is the youth and you embrace your recruiting and you think your recruiting classes measure up, even though the necessarily the numbers, the rankings don't show it. But if you trust them, like go with your gut, man. Like you have to play the guys you brought in to turn this program around, and eventually it's got to work. It's either gonna work or because it's you're being too stubborn at the wrong positions, basically, is what I'm saying. And it doesn't make sense to kind of what he emphasized so much last year of this massive youth movement at Florida. But
Yeah, I completely agree. And I really want to pivot to the offensive line, which you mentioned a couple times, because
yes,
that is where I have my most non-DJ thoughts, and probably my most fully formed thoughts. Because I love offensive line play. Over the last 5 years, I've kind of been like offensive line pilled.
hell yeah.
That is where my bread is buttered these days. And I just rewatched the first half of the Samford game just to get a little refresh, see what's going on. And I have one big takeaway that I want to get your thoughts on about why the offensive line is so inconsistent and low key kind of bad. And that is in that first half, I counted 8 different offensive linemen that played, and there are no injuries in this offensive line. You can't do that.
It's
You
crazy.
that's not how this position works. The whole point of offensive lines is that they work as a unit and they have chemistry together. And that's why the best offensive lines in college football history are when you have like 2 or 3 seniors that have started like 3 years together, patched in with a couple of guys who've been starting there for 2 years, and then like maybe one inexperienced guy, one transfer from a FCS team, one 5-star freshman, like whatever. Like So I'm seeing this and I'm like, what is going on? Because it literally manifests in these issues. This Samford game, there was two times, but especially one time, it was either a sack or a play where DJ has to like fight for his life and make something happen. They do such a terrible job passing off a stunt inside. And it ends up with Slaughter and Harris, Jake Slaughter and Najee Harris both block the nose, and then the other tackle wraps around and is basically trying to kill DJ. Wide open, unblocked. And similar issues, passing off stunts, you know, finding your guy in the zone scheme happens all the damn time. There are so many times where an offensive lineman is just lost. And that's because these guys are swapping and cutting and chopping all the damn time. And this is not the position group where you're supposed to do that. You can do that on the defensive line. You can do that at linebacker. You can do that at wide receiver. You can do that at running back. This is not a position you can afford to chop and change. And playing two different left guards, two different left tackles, two different right guards, two different right tackles, one of that second left tackle also playing some right tackle. What are we doing? What is
It's
happening?
it's crazy. And something like to your point, I agree. Something to your point that makes me so curious because like I mean I focused on a lot more in that Miami game rather than that like it was definitely an issue in that Sanford game, but I was definitely more keyed in on it the first game is some of like the things they do, like you said, it's just so odd. And I'm almost curious, like we don't watch the practices, like we don't know what they do behind the scenes. But I'm so curious, like they play so many guys at offensive line and so much rotation. I'm almost curious if there's some weird situation where like they put more emphasis on some guys for run pro and like more emphasis on others for pass pro. And but then when they all have to do the other thing that they do, then it's like it all just gets jumbled. Because I mean, Florida, at its nature, Billy Napier wants Florida to be a run heavy offense. Like they have Montrell Johnson. Last year they had Johnson and ETN. They have guys they like in Trayon Webb and Jaden Baugh and Katie Daniels. So like they definitely want to run the ball down your throat. But when that doesn't work, or like, hey, like maybe we want to stretch the field, we want an explosive play, because Billy Napier also does love, you know, complex and interesting pass plays, then what does the offensive line do? And it's like they just fall apart because the other thing too is like to your point, Billy likes to do these like interesting like RPOs or like play action rollouts or just all these different kind of plays that are not like typical just in shotgun pass plays. But to do stuff like that, your offensive line
Has to be
has to
better. It has to hold
shift.
up way longer.
Yeah. And that just doesn't happen. And the times that it did where it held up was DJ being like, okay, I hiked the ball. My guy is going down the field. Like he's moving and I have the arm just to launch this ball. But other than that, or he's like dropping back. Like I know so many times DJ Lagway drops back like almost 10 yards. And it's kind of like I know some quarterbacks will do that. And like if you have the arm, it doesn't matter. But like it shouldn't be normal for your quarterback to feel like he has to drop back into the his own end zone to feel like he's safe from the defensive line. And that's a massive exaggeration, but I mean, come on, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so you can't be chopping and changing that much. That's just so stupid. And maybe there are teams out there that do this effectively. If someone knows, let me know and enlighten me, please. I would love to be proven wrong. I don't think I am because
I
this
mean,
is not a thing that happens.
if it does happen, then it's got to be, and I don't watch enough of these teams admittedly to know for like a fact, but like I mentioned last week, like it would have to be like a Georgia where it's like it doesn't matter. You're probably three deep at NFL prospects, so you could exchange as much as you want.
Like
They don't do that,
it's
but
crazy. And
like they could if they wanted.
the crazy thing too is not only is this just not how offensive line works 99% of the time. The other thing is it's like actively making yourself worse for no reason and taking away reps that matter from guys who need reps together. For example, this is something I noticed. The left side of Florida's offensive line is way better than the right side. The duo and then Slaughter at center of Barber at left tackle, Austin Barber at left tackle, and Najee Harris at left guard is pretty good. They have some weaknesses. They've made some mistakes. I think that's the strength of the offensive line. So why on earth am I in the second quarter and I have to look up the roster to see who the heck is even playing right now? Because it's like 53 and I don't recognize that jersey number. I'm like, what is happening? Instead of Najee Harris, who's probably the best offensive lineman right now. And it's like, Bryce Lovett, where'd you come from? What's
Yeah,
happened?
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's just like pick the five. Pick the five. And it should be Barber, Harris, Slaughter. I guess we're gonna have to do the Damian George thing again, and probably Crenshaw Dixon.
Okay, here's my question to you. And here, I guess just proposing this to you. So someone showed like a tweet, I don't remember who it is, so I'm sorry I can't credit you, of Damian George's game against Miami. And him alone, he actually looked pretty good. And then so here's what I'm posing to you, because you know offensive line much better than I do. Is Damian George bad, or is he just often stuck with like the worst like is just he just by nature just next to the worst part of Florida's offensive line, which is right tackle?
Great question. I think it's a layered question. So
Yeah,
the first part is Damian George was one of the worst right tackles I've ever seen. Last year
it's
when he
not
started at
good.
right tackle, he's just so slow that he's a total liability in pass protection. And sometimes he can be a road graver, like he can just maul people because he's gigantic in the run game, which is why he's playing guard now. So he's not great. Um, but I think to your point, the biggest problem with him is that he's playing next to the rotating door that is right tackle. And it's not even that those guys stink, which they do. Cam Waits is just not an SEC right
Yeah.
tackle. I'm not sure he's a right tackle. I'm not sure he's a college football player. Um, he stinks.
It's rough. I mean, he was a former basketball player that they just thought he was really big, so they tried to convert him.
It's
So that's
it's
always rough.
crazy. So like, and Crenshaw Dixon is like fine, but again, when you're chopping and changing so much, none of these guys can get comfortable. And the kid from Arkansas has played both tackle spots already, and I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind, and I don't know what's happening. Just pick a right tackle so that maybe they can develop next to Damian George, and that right side of the offensive line can be functional instead of a gigantic liability, because that's even affecting how they have to call games. How often do they actually run wide zone to the right side? It's not as often, it's just not as frequent because they can't, because those two guys are just clogging up the lanes and getting penetration immediately. And oh, also
Yeah,
none of these
there
guys are good enough.
yeah, that's the thing. Like there's the rare case where if you're just not good. Again, I'm sure Cam Waits is a great person. And so I don't mean to keep piling on him, but like I don't think even if you just kept him, like he would improve that much because he just does not look like an SEC right tackle. But like for most of these guys, if you just stick to a five, I don't think like night and day, like you get to the end of the year and you're like, wow, they play like the Georgia offensive line now. Like that kind of looks like an NFL offensive line. Like that's not going to happen. But there is a very real case where you pick your five, that's who you stick out with. You get to the end of the season, you're like, wow, they actually look decent. Like they're not bottom of the SEC bad offensive line. They're middle of the pack, which if you get a middle of the pack offensive line, you stick to your five, you get a middle of the pack. You have DJ as your quarterback, who even when the line falls apart and there's no protection, he can still make something happen. You get to, you get to a pretty promising point. You get to 7-8 wins, which at this point is what Florida needs. Like they need to get to at least that point as a football team.
Yeah, and I think kind of my final points here with the line is like you mentioned it earlier, the recruiting at this position is not good enough. And this is the one position where I will hear an argument that the rankings aren't as important. There's a lot of great offensive linemen that fall through the cracks more so than any other position in the recruiting rankings. Like the best example, Joe Alt was a three-star tight end who started every game for 4 straight years and was like a three-time All-American. You
Yeah.
know, um, or sorry, 3 straight years because he was a top five pick after his junior year. Um, so that just kind of happens. So like it's less about the recruiting rankings and more just like, man, you know, it just bums me out how
Yeah.
mediocre this is. And the other thing with that recruiting is you can't have three transfer offensive linemen. That's not sustainable. Like it worked once because they got Osiris Torrance, plug and play off or All American. That was cool. You
That was
can't
pretty
transfer
sick.
other offensive linemen. It's we know this doesn't work. It is a very proven formula that it doesn't work.
Plus, that wasn't even like necessarily a thing where it was like, oh, he just saw a dude and he thought he could be good. Like he brought him from his former school. Like it was basically just like Billy Napier, still just his team. You know, I don't want to say that transfer didn't count, but like it's not like he scouted a dude from Oregon State and then brought him over. Like that was his former school. And yeah, I mean, and I think the thing that's so interesting is like to your point, offensive lines those positions where like the stars next to your name don't always tell the whole story of how good you are, especially at a position like that. But there is something to be said about the fact that you look at the line and it's pretty much all 3 stars, and then they play like 3 stars. Like they just don't play SEC caliber offensive line play. And so you're like, okay, there is the argument that like that is a position that's hard to evaluate in high school, but also would it hurt to go in and try and get a 4 or 5 star? At least to see what would happen. Because at least right now, I don't know if it's a development thing or if it's just the guys themselves. That's probably a little bit of both. They have two
Yeah.
offensive line coaches, so it's just like, how are we not developing? But
It it's crazy. And I will say I'll give them time to develop. I'm not super worried about the development yet because they're so young and Najee already looks pretty good as a true sophomore starting at left guard. I'm very impressed with him. And I think he's already looks better than last year. And I think he was honestly pretty good last year, and he's good now. My worry is like their approach to playing 8 guys or 7 guys or whatever the rotation is. Like that's crazy. What are we doing, guys? Um, like that's just not going to work because these guys aren't going to develop in an environment like that, and they're not going to
it's
get
nuts.
sustainably better. So it baffles me, and yeah, I you just got to make hard decisions and play the right guys, and I think Billy Napier is really hard at that, or really bad at that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that kind of really ties a nice bow on everything we've talked about. So, Topher, would you like to vent about our other teams? Would you like to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish?
Yeah, hold on, let me cook real quick because that was we've all seen this game before, right? If you follow college football, you know that Notre Dame is prone to some bullshit, right? They do it all the time. They've done it for like 15 years. Even in the Brian Kelly days when they won all their games, they still almost lost to Ball State one time. They almost lost to Vanderbilt one time. They lost to Tulsa. They lost to South Florida. Like it happens, right? It's Notre Dame. I don't even know what to say about losing 16 to 14 to Northern Illinois in your home opener after beating a top 20 Texas A&M team on the road, other than like, what are we doing? What the hell is going on?
It's
Uh,
certainly tough.
like I honestly, when I texted my dad about it, I kind of because he didn't watch the game live. He was like, "What the heck just happened?" So I'm just like, I boil it down simplest terms, and I don't think I think analytically minded people are trying to think of it more broad strokes, bigger picture. I think we're overthinking it, fellas. I think Riley Leonard's just ass.
It could be true. It was, I
Like,
mean, that game Saturday was not good. It was
like
definitely,
he sucks.
yeah.
Like the offensive line was underwhelmed, right? The defense was undisciplined, and their eye discipline was really bad. Um, Northern Illinois played a freaking amazing game. They had the perfect game plan. But like, dude, the quarterback just stinks.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I feel like if you watched that game, pretty much a lot of people saw the post game press conference with their, or not press, the interview with their head coach. He was super emotional and he said like, we didn't need to be lucky, we just had to be at our best. And I think that was true. Like there, it's not like one of those upsets where you're like a Hail Mary or like something insane happens where like final play, like that was not luck. Like Northern Illinois played the perfect game that they had to play. And it's not like Notre Dame didn't have so many chances to put that game away and take the lead and just win it. I mean, I'll let you take it away. This is
Like
your
it okay, so I pulled up on Twitter the game losing interception from Riley Leonard, right? He throws
yeah.
a terrible they have a chance to basically ice the game, get out of here with an ugly win, and they don't ask how, they ask how many. And like this play is just so bad. And I've seen so many people blame the coaching staff um, for making this call, but here's the situation. And this is why I think it's 100% Riley Leonard's fault and why I'm willing to run him over with the bus as opposed to blame anybody else.
Okay.
So they're up by one, ball's at like midfield, it's second one, right? They decide to go for a kill shot, take the top off the defense, put this game out of reach, right? Everyone's saying, why'd you do that? Just run the ball, short pass, whatever. And it ends up getting intercepted. The problem is the call is fine. One, I like being aggressive. Two, the guy's not open, but he's not like blanketed either. If you put a right ball out there, he has a chance or it's incomplete. The other thing is there's two other guys open on the play. There's the second option, the second read is wide open, the third read is wide open. He stays on his first read, who's like kind of covered. Not great. The third thing is that this thing is 20 yards underthrown. This is one of the single worst passes I've ever seen in my entire life. Like horrific.
It's it's one of those things where like you said, like it's not like it's third or fourth down. So at the very least, airmail it. Miss
Yep.
your guy by 20 yards past him.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, that was a bad throw, but whatever. You airmailed it. We live to see another day. Then we'll run it on third. Or like you said,
Exactly.
hit the other two guys, but he tries it and he underthrows it by so much. And
Like
it's not ball game right then and there, but it feels ball game right then and there.
it's like you pay the money, and they definitely paid the money to get a quarterback that you trust to be your guy to elevate the program. So you can call the kill shot if he's your guy. And I think the receivers are fine. It's just like, bro, like
It's tough.
I've seen plenty of bad quarterback play watching Notre Dame and Florida football games the last 10 years, but that was like the worst performance I can remember. Like maybe not Max Brown tier, but like it's down there.
Yeah, there's probably a Treon Harris play performance that can rival it, but that was pretty rough.
Yeah.
It was not what you want to see.
I will end it with saying I don't think Notre Dame needs to panic. Genuinely, like they can just win games against bad teams, they'll be fine. But the problem is like, can they grow up? Can you stop being dumb? And maybe bench the quarterback if he doesn't get better. Because
That's
like
true. They
good
might be.
Lord. But
They have a young, like exciting dude behind him, right? Am
well,
I
they have a
correct on that?
couple. They have a decent redshirt freshman, a okay redshirt sophomore who's played a little bit and was really good in the bowl game, and then they have a high 4-star, low 5-star true freshman. They
There are
got guys,
options. They got guys.
but no one needs to talk about sad Notre Dame when the woke mob
Oh yeah.
successfully invaded Auburn, Alabama.
No SEC teams can't win non-conference games anymore because of woke. Confirmed on Saturday. Cal went in there. That was the most juiced I've been in a long time watching any college football team, to be honest. Probably the most juiced I've been since Florida beat Utah in 2022. I mean, as something that I find so interesting to contrast Florida and Cal is the way their players, like every player is going to take accountability for the most part. Shador Sanders, sorry. But for most part, like most college players are taking accountability. We've been to a million Graham Mertz press conferences where he talks about like this has to be better, and I believe him. I'm not saying he's like lying, but to go out there in a like tough SEC environment like Auburn, who is like a pretty good team, beat them, and like the score is 21-14, but my God, Cal kind of controlled that game the whole time. Peyton Thorne was in a hell. Um, Fernando Mendoza looked incredible that first half, and he got rough the second half because, I mean, again, something that's so impressive. Cal was down two offensive linemen. Jaden Knott was limited because he'd been dealing with an injury from the week before. He only had 11 yards off 10 carries. Uh, they had two of their star wide receivers were out, and I think they were missing a linebacker. And then their cornerback got ejected in the third quarter off of a crazy targeting call. And I do not think should have ejected him. And so with all that adversity, they go in there and they took Auburn's lunch money. I mean, Payne Thorne threw, I believe, four picks. They forced a fumble on Jarquez Hunter, who's a really good running back. I mean, just all around incredible performance. And in the post game press conference, shout out to Fernando Mendoza for shouting out the Cal Burners again, my guy. But he also talked about how like he knows like the narrative online where like everyone always says like typical. Like this is the typical Cal performance of like falling apart and underperforming and underwhelming. And I think it's just so refreshing where so many coaches or players will just immediately just dismiss what the fans say or like we see what you say, like we're gonna do better, like whatever, like or they'll take a shot, like Billy Napier talking about basements in rural Central Florida. But to see a quarterback like Fernando, a sophomore, take like the initiative to be like, we know what you guys say, like we understand, like we know what the culture's like, and we're here to change that, and we're doing that by beating teams like Auburn on the road in an environment like that. And so I'm very excited as a Cal fan. For those who don't know, my dad went there, so it's not just like I randomly picked this team. And the schedule, I mean, they've got FSU in 2 weeks. They've got San Diego State next week. They do have Miami at home. So they could make a run at the ACC, which would be funny because they've actually been pretty bad in the Pac-12 the past few years. Like they finished towards the bottom last year. I don't think they've had a winning season in the Pac-12 under Justin Wilcox outside of like maybe 1 year. So it would be hilarious if they went like 6-2 in the ACC in their first year. But I'm very excited. I mean, team's got some dudes. Jonathan Brady, shout out. Noel Williams, shout out. And Isaiah Hunter, freshman wide receiver, was a dog. Shout out. Fernando Mendoza, shout out. I mean, he was incredible. He looked good. Um,
Hey, that Cal Syracuse ACC title game is going to go
it's gonna go
crazy.
nuts. It's gonna go nuts. I mean, come on, man. And plus, and then shout out the Cal Burners, man. Just incredible work.
There,
Trolling
there are so
Auburn
many
fans
good
all
fan
week.
bases, so many good fan bases on college football Twitter. Cal's is so good.
It's so awesome, man. I love it. I love it so much. Shout out to the woke agenda. Uh, winners again. We're back. Um, and man, Peyton Thorne. This is the
Ooh,
thing. This is what I'm
stinky,
saying about DJ
stinky, stinky.
Lagway. Not every like this is just stuff you don't see because Peyton Thorne, they dropped so many NIL bags to bring in what is probably one of the best wide receiver cores in the country. I mean, Cam Coleman, dude looks like a freak. He's a good wide receiver. Kendra Lambert Smith, the transfer from Penn State, I think he's really good. And there's guys who are not at the top of my head, but they are really talented. They have Jarquez Hunter, who, like I said, again, one of the more talented running backs in the SEC, um, who's solid. But Payne Thorne, man, they did have every opportunity to win that game. I mean, there were some calls that were iffy. That I admit my bias. There was, some play offensively towards the end where they just couldn't protect Fernando, but and they shut down Jaden Knott, but they just couldn't do it because Payne Thorne was just not that guy as quarterback, and you contrast that with a guy like DJ, and it's like, come on, this is what you have to do to win the SEC. You have to play your guys who do things that are not normal. Like this is special stuff. So that's how I'll wrap it up. That's how I'll close it out. DJ Lagway is the truth. He's a guy. Um, Florida's got Texas A&M next week to open up SEC play. Topher, anything you'd like to say about that? Just close it out. Final statements.
Uh, Texas A&M is not that good. Um, this is a must win for Florida to be a functional football team. We kind of threw everything out the window after Miami. They win this one, I'll hop back on the train.
Yeah, I mean the schedule definitely. If they play like they did against Stanford, or at least look so close to that, because I know that was an FCS school, then they could be back. Because I mean that's Texas A&M at home, Mississippi State on the road, UCF at home. I don't know if it's in that order exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's their next 3 games. All winnable if they play like that. If DJ Lagway gets his minutes, if they can stick to 5 offensive linemen, there is a way to fix this and turn it around from that horrendous week 1. But we'll see. We'll wait and see. And if they win 42-0, then maybe we'll have thoughts. If they lose 42-0, then I think we'll definitely have thoughts. But we will see. So thank you again for tuning to two Florida fans talking from their rural central basement. See ya.